Hey, it's Jeremy, Jeremy.net. I'm a comic book artist, writer, creator, and self-publisher. I share my creative process here with you on the internet. If you'd like to support this channel, get additional bonus live streams twice a month, see my work before anybody else, get to read my comic books for free, you can become a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/GERIMI. Patreon.com/Jeremy. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, get work in progress animated GIFs dropped into your inbox, and get little blog posts, little messages from me about what I'm working on, what I'm thinking about, or just funny things that happen to me, you can sign up for my monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to get physical copies of my comics, or if you read digitally on Kindle or at Comixology, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. I'll forward you to my Amazon author pages. My author page, you can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a psychological thriller about a man he is cursed with visions he cannot control. That book right there, it's a self-contained black and white graphic novel. Or you can pick up volume 1 of my current series, Morning Star. Morning Star tells the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. This book contains issues 1 through 4 of an 8-issue series. So you can pick up all of these at amazon.jeremy.net. Again, that's amazon.gerimi.net. Okay. And oddly enough, all of my copies are in boxes right now, but I have a copy. But the final issue of Morning Star issue 8 is available at jeremy.net. That's my main website, the single comic issue in print. So if you want to check that out, you can go to jeremy.net and pick up a copy there. It's also available on Comixology digitally if you want to get a digital copy of the final one. So you can read the whole series digitally on Comixology. All right there. Let's see. Folks in the chat. I see William is there. Hello, William. How you doing? Thanks for showing up. Mars is there. So she just finished a BTS sweater for her sister. Cool. Awesome. All right. So where are we at? What am I working on? What am I doing? I have no idea what I'm doing anymore. The days are just bleeding into each other. All right. So when last we spoke, I was working on figure drawings. So Dizzy's in the chat. Yo, thanks for showing up. So the Morning Star Volume 2, collecting issues 5 through 8. I had shown you work where I was sketching out this cover. So I went through and I was doing a couple of color studies. So the first color study was just me drawing what I imagined in my head, just in terms of the color palette. Now, after I did this, I looked at this and it already, I wasn't quite feeling it. Like it was in the ballpark of what I wanted. But I took a step back and I said, well, let me do a value study before I do a color study. So this more polished one that you're looking at here, really this one looked a lot like this. And I did 2 versions. I did one like this where the warm colors, the gray that you see, that's Lucifer's flesh tones, is the same gray. But I did one like this where I keyed the whole thing to warm colors, and then I did the same thing where I keyed the whole one to cool colors, just for contrast. And what I realized was that I definitely liked the one with the cool colors up here, except I realized that I thought it made a nice transition to key the whole thing to cool colors, but then change the ground tone to warm. So you're getting that contrast there. And then Lucifer himself was just gray. So I took that study, and that is what you see here, the more refined version. In fact, let me see if I've got the layers. I may have actually put layers on here. I experimented with the idea of having a bunch of like embers, flaming particles kind of like going around him. Then I realized that it doesn't make sense unless you actually physically see a fire or a glow from a fire around him. So I got rid of that. And if I turn off this, okay, see, now you can actually see what the comparison is. So this is the gray version up here in the upper right. And then, this is the cool version in the upper right. And then you've got the warm version in the lower left. but then I changed the ground plane to match the warms of the lower one. So basically, I did this, and you can see that I actually have that original sketch is very lightly on a light layer placed on top of it. You can see that right there. And once I had this, then I went in and proceeded to paint all of that detail that you see in terms of the abs, the gun, belt, the folds and the wrinkles, detail of his wings, the serpent. And now that I have all of this in this tiny little thumbnail, and I'm happy with the colors, now I'm ready to go on to the final version. This is all of the prep work that I do to get myself ready for doing a final illustration. And I find that I get two different reactions from people, because a lot of people think, it's ridiculous to go through this much prep work and so many revisions and all these little iterations. They're just like, get in there, just make the piece. What I find, and this is not true for all artists, so I'm not telling you got to do it this way. By the way, William says, sick drawing. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate that. And I'm just moving my books so I don't get coffee on them. Because I need some coffee right now because I am still waking up. All right. What I find is that if I don't go through all of these levels of revision and thinking my way through the process, I just end up getting halfway done with the piece, or I'm like hip deep in the painting, and I realize that there's just things structurally that don't work, that I'm not happy with, and then I have to go back and fix them, and it ends up being a lot more wasted time than if I had just done the studies in the first place. William says, I understand why you're doing all of this planning, though. Yeah, exactly. I'm sure you've been there, where you look at a piece and you're like, wow, if I had just taken more time to think this out in the beginning, I would have exactly what I want, instead of having to go back. And what really happens is I end up having to go back and do it all anyway after spending hours working on a quote-unquote finished version and it not coming out right. So basically now what I'm doing is I'm going in and I'm redrawing that little thumbnail sketch I had of Lucifer and trying to fix all the anatomical details before I start painting. Stuff here, like just getting the serpent head. And right now I'm not even really thinking about the details per se. What I'm trying to do is just get the volumes to feel three-dimensional. This brush might be a little big. But what I'm doing, one of the things I'm also doing is I have this set up. So I'm drawing this in the frame of the cover. And as you can see, the text is backwards because I have flipped the drawing. And that's, anyone who's been watching my channel for any period of time has seen me do the thing where I'm flipping my drawings. Again, thank you to my buddy Carl Altstetter. Although I don't necessarily do it the way I think a lot of other people do, because I think most artists, and it probably is the better method, they flip back and forth as they're constructing the drawing constantly. Whereas what I tend to do is I draw it out as good as I think it can possibly be, and then I flip it and then just correct all the mistakes. I think because if I were drawing it, flipping it as I go, I feel like I would keep just correcting, making mistakes and fixing mistakes, making mistakes and fixing mistakes. Like I would just keep undoing whatever I just did. Whereas by coming in here and getting it to where I believe I'm all, oh, okay, the sketch that's underneath here, underneath the layer I'm working on now, this to me, I've got it on low opacity. but it feels to me like everything is in its right place. I'm happy with it. I like the way it looks. So when I come in here and I go to make corrections, it's like, you know, there's little things like just making sure that I mean, honestly, there isn't really much other than his supporting leg. I probably exaggerated. Well, I definitely exaggerated it. It looks as opposed to him just having a cool stance. It almost looks like it's broken at the knee or just below the knee. So I need to fix that. But for the most part, this is surprising. It's rare for me to be this happy with an underdrawing. The main things I really want to fix are, again, his leg and the serpent's head, just putting it in the right place. Let's see here. Amara says, all my designs are done traditionally and charted on software. Oh, she says last night her Instagram and Facebook was hacked. Sorry to hear that. That's a bummer. Got to be careful with them passwords. Let's see. William says, mine are also drawn traditional. I know, autocorrect is the bane of digital communication these days. Ducking sucks. Don't want to start erasing. I want to keep drawing. So yeah, I find just getting in here and getting it to as far as I think the piece can go, everything feels right, and then coming in and correcting things gives me better results. And I don't want to go digging for reference right now, but in looking at this, I really feel like I should be looking at some snake reference for the head because vipers have a very distinct head shape, and this guy is feeling more of a constrictor. It's interesting because I'm not a big snake person. I actually used to be deathly afraid of snakes when I was a child. But I had a neighbor who had a boa constrictor, and I kind of forced myself. Like for a while, I didn't go over to his house for like a week. And then finally, I forced myself to just go over there, not just hang out with him. Like it was hard for me to even be in the same room with the cage. But then finally, I forced myself to hold the snake. And this wasn't something that like he made me do or my parents made me do. I just thought, okay, I don't like the fact that I'm afraid of this thing. So I want to overcome my fear of it. And, you know, as a little kid, I just sat there and held the snake, and I could feel it kind of, you know, writhing around and squeezing my hand. Fortunately, it was a small constrictor. Like it was, you know, it was a baby. It was maybe 2 feet long. You know, still, it was very, very small. Believe me, if it had been a larger snake, I don't think I could have done that as a child. But I'm glad I did it. Of course, as Dr. Jones has proven, there is no shame in being afraid of snakes. Oh, you know what? My reference library. Oh. So I keep a stack. You know, everyone's got some books that are useful to them. I keep a stack of books right by my right behind my drawing table here. Some are art books, some are reference books that I refer to frequently. This is one of them. It's one of the DK series. This one is just called Animal, and it's a very rich encyclopedia. And yes, of course, I flip right to the reptiles section. Let me see here. Vipers, right to the vipers page. Yeah, vipers have a more triangular shaped head. Vipers are the most highly evolved of snakes. Huh, did not know that. All right, I could actually get caught up in just reading little snake details. Western diamondback. Ooh. There's some pissed off looking snakes. All right. I'm not as far off as I really have there. I just need to square up this head a little bit. In fact, I might have been trying to improve the storytelling by having the snake's head resting right on Lucifer's wrist like that. But I think it'll work a little bit better if I push this back a tiny bit. So what I really want to do is block out the whole wedge of the head. And that feels a little bit better. As opposed to the way I first drew it, where I had the eyes kind of bulging out of the head. Whew. Like I said, need coffee. Yeah, I think even though I wanted to get that sense of the snake's head, like resting on his wrist, it looked a little bit weird with me having the lower part of its face curved up like that. So I'm just going to come back in here and put a few of these lines back in. And now instead of having the eyes bulging up the way I did, I can have them down here sort of set on the side. A little bit of a bulge on top. But really placing them firmly on the side. And when I get all of these details drawn in, then I'll flip it back and make corrections from that angle, from the forward angle. So let's see. William says, where you are, what time is it? It is a little after 11 a.m. It's about 11:30. But I also stay up on the weekends later than I should. Usually, till 1 or 2. So I'm just sleepy because I slept in late and I just woke up. Literally, I have an alarm set on my phone to wake me up at 10:30 on Sunday mornings for the live stream, because a half hour gives me just enough time to get out of bed, brush my teeth, get coffee, and get my computer set up before the stream. Otherwise, I would probably sleep until 11 or 11:30 on a Sunday. So yeah, most mornings it takes me a little while and a little bit loopy at the start of the stream. It's not like I'm starting the live stream at like 6 in the morning or anything. All right. Now the challenge here is it's really easy. I mean, my point in this phase of the drawing is to fix details. But in fixing the details, it's very easy to get lost in the details. So I'm trying to both refine and simplify at the same time. And that is a tough balance to walk, really. Because when you start putting in detail, at least for me, it's very easy to simply want to fall completely into it and just render the hell out of everything. But what I'm really trying to do is look for ways to remove detail, look for ways to cut this piece down to its essence. I mean, I've cited many times my admiration for the work of Alex Toth. I'm certainly not simplifying to his degree. Like, Toth really gets down to what do you need and get rid of everything else, which is what makes him a master storyteller. You know, and even right here, you can see I mentioned that thing about wanting to fix Lucifer's standing leg. When you compare this that we're looking at to that, you can see that I've shifted the leg back over so that he still has his cool stance, but it's much more in line now with proper anatomy. Let's see. William says it's 2:30 where I am. Wow. Okay. Well, no, I was gonna say 2:30. I didn't know. I don't know if it's 2:30 a.m. or 2:30 p.m. So we're over on the East Coast. At first, I was like, "Wow, being up in the middle of the night, super late." But I'm like, no, a little afternoon time. Well, that's cool, man. And you know what? It's nice to, you know, kind of connecting all the coasts, connecting the different time zones. Ichisan is in the chat. He says, thanks for your time. The world will appreciate arts a bit more, should appreciate the arts a bit more, especially this type of instruction and program. You know what? I am humbled and honored by that. And thank you for spending time with me. One of the things that I really try to show, you know, in my live stream and in the work that I share is that, you know, artists don't just draw things out of the air like magic. It may look like that at times, but for the most part, 9 times out of 10, everything that I know for me and for most of the artists I talk to, the things that we do that look magical are built upon the foundation of like tons of studies, you know, doing figure studies and practicing, going to figure drawing classes, doing thumbnail sketches. And like even a sketch that looks like it's drawn just spontaneously, we've probably practiced that sketch dozens and dozens and dozens of times. There are people who can just draw things magically out of their imagination and haven't spent ages doing countless studies. But those people are true geniuses. Most artists, myself included, are not geniuses. We just work really hard. And I think that also helps with people who maybe enjoy making art for fun or want to do art professionally, and they feel really daunted, but they're like, I want to be able to do this, but I'm just not good enough. In fact, I was even talking to someone in a Facebook group about this, in the fact that no one ever, a lot of artists never feel like we're good enough. We know all of the skills. It is constantly a work in progress. We're constantly trying to grow, to learn, to improve in our craft and experiment. And you can't just, you know, if you wait till you feel like you have mastered everything, you'll be waiting forever. At a certain point, you just got to say, screw it. You know, I'm going to war with the skill set that I have, and you just start making it. That definitely means there will be times you're going to make something that you're going to cringe at years from now. Sometimes you're going to make something you're going to cringe at days from now. I'm putting too many lines in here. Gotta clear that out a little bit so I have room to. The advantage here is that I can use the underbelly of the snake. not just as detail, but to help describe the direction the snake's body is turning. And that's what I really like to do with detail. I'm not big on having a super detailed comic page where you like render the hell out of it. What I like to do is put detail there where it can do double duty, both in terms of describing the object and indicating something about the form. Honestly, just understanding the concept of form, understanding drawings as you're creating the illusion of a three-dimensional object, that took me years to really absorb that. And it's something that I'm still trying to master. But just really even being able to think of a drawing in such a way, it took me a long time to get there. Then you've got those things where, let me see, do I have a brush that has a little bit more smoothing on it? Studio Pen Smooth. So this one is the same brush, this is a little bit more smoothing on it. This is one of those where I've got this line almost where I want it, but it does not, you know, it's just a little bit off, which can be very frustrating when you've got a line that is, whoops, past these two. That's odd. I think they have them both on full opacity. I don't know why it would be so different. Bring the size down. It can be very frustrating when you've got a line that is almost what you want. And then you just keep kind of shaving off, adding to, trying to get it right where you want it to be. I gotta clean up all of this in here. And the shoulder. See, it's important to draw through so you understand what's going to be covered up and what's, you know, behind the objects you're drawing. But also that can be challenging, and that you find that now the drawing is a little bit muddy because there's all this stuff that you kind of have to erase underneath what you're doing. And I think I'm holding the pencil a little bit too hard. Sometimes I do that when I'm focusing. I fall back into my my deft grip mode, where it's not just that I'm pressing down on the surface hard, like pressing harder is going to make it do what I want more, but also the fact that I'm like pinching the pencil harder. And both of those things seem like they would give me more control, but really they give me less control. And I find that I have the most control over my drawings no matter what tool I'm using when I'm kind of letting it kind of float in my hand and I'm just slightly nudging it one way or the other. It feels more like I'm, you know, controlling a magic wand as opposed to trying to like carve my name into a tablet. See a bit of this. And the real question is, how much am I going to clean up this line art? Because, well, I think I'm just going to try and basically come as close as I can to sort of digitally inking it. because I have tried doing digital paintings where I think whatever the last piece was I was working on. Oh no, it was the cover to the final issue of Morningstar. And I had tried to remove the line art and just do a digital painting. And even though that color thumbnail that I showed you guys at the start really, I think, works as a painting, I've found that there's something about my style of artwork that lends itself to having line art. And that it made more sense to simply leave the lines in as opposed to trying to do it with just color. And that may just be the phase in my art that I am in at this moment. And I may not always draw and paint with lines. Instead, dealing more with like the edge of color, doing soft and hard edges. You know, what we think of when we think of traditional painting. Nope. Got it. Come in here. The other challenge is trying to put details in there and not create tangents. Because I don't know if you guys have heard, I hate me some tangents. I hate them. Oh, the lighting looks weird. So you guys really need to see me. See, I'm pretty happy with the overall shape and details. Let me just get the wings in here. And I'm wondering, Lucifer is going to have lines, but I may very well just take the background that I drew and just put that in without line art and repaint it, just so the edges where I want them to be can be a little more crisp. Because that thumbnail's pretty tiny. I'm tempted to bring it in right now just for comparison. So you can see sort of between where I've got the colors now versus, well, there's no colors in here, but see how it looks on this larger version of the drawing. But I'm afraid that I may start obsessing already with trying to reconcile any differences between this version that I'm redrawing and the version that I did in the color thumbnail. There'll be plenty of time for me obsessing about that. I don't need to start quite yet. I guess right now what I'm trying to do is think of what are any major areas that I have not finished thinking my way through. Because if the pose of the figure is worked out, I gotta draw the gun in. If I've got the pose of the figure, at this point, I can almost just say, all right, now I can just work on anatomy and details in the drawing and get it to where it needs to be. I guess I'm just trying to, I'm in sort of a final, not a final, but at each phase, I try to give it a once over and say, all right, have I done everything I'm supposed to do at this phase? Right now, this phase being basic figure construction. You know, the volumes of all the limbs, the volumes of the serpent, the wings, because the background itself is all going to be, as much as I try to make an effort to not just draw things looking like flat backdrops, a lot of the background for this piece is going to sort of feel like that, because he's not really interacting with the environment in this image. All right, get his wings on the inside here. Get his belt line. Yeah, now I guess I can just go in here and start working the details. And again, this is the challenge here, is adding detail that clarifies as opposed to distracts. Which is not as easy as it sounds. And what up, my boy Amar's in the chat. What's up, man? How you doing? I'm back on this this Morning Star cover for Volume 2. So I was at the start of the stream. I was flipping over to the other image. I finished working out my my color thumbnails, and this here is my final color thumbnail. Lucifer holding the gun, serpent wrapped around his hand, wrapped around his body, really. And so now I'm going in. I'm taking my my rough drawing that I have of him, and I am in a different file, cleaning it up at a higher resolution. So I'm both cleaning up the construction, and then I'm going to come in and I'm going to come in and digitally ink it. I just need to get these details squared away. So yeah, just chugging along here. And by the way, while I am fairly happy with the way this is coming out, you know, it's pretty common for a lot of artists to be at some point in a piece you're working on to just be going, I hate this thing so bad, why does this suck? And to just be like, you know, everything feels like a wrong move. That happens. I don't feel that way right now, but I think knowing that with most pieces that phase does happen, and to have been through it enough times to know that if I keep going, I will get past that phase and I will get back to a point of being happy again. It keeps me pretty calm. I don't freak out when I hit that phase anymore. There we go. And I've got a second holster on this side of his body. Okay, that's something I need to come back in here and do. So I've got one holster that's on his hip. Two-gun Lucifer over here. And it's sort of hanging behind his hip. Just a matter of trying to draw this in such a way that, again, Doesn't create tangents. Let's see here. Oh, Wells in the chat. He says, hi, good to see you. Hope you feel good and enjoy. And he says, and enjoy with this artwork. I will enjoy. I'm enjoying quite a bit. Thank you. Amar says he's great. And you? He said, looking good. I was going to mention that an alternate version where Lucifer was pointing the gun towards the camera would add dynamics to the pose and intensify it. So like a 3/4 view, but that's just my 2 cents. You know what? That is a great suggestion, but unfortunately I've already used it in that when I was working on that cover for the final issue, and I had Lucifer in sort of a 3/4 towards the, pointing in the direction of the camera, but not right at it. And then my buddy Carl Altstetter was kind of looking at it like I was having trouble with it. He gave me a little bit of diagnostic advice. And he said, hey, move that so that Lucifer's pointing the gun right at the viewer and the camera. So I know you're saying more of a 3/4 view, but I think if I do that, it'll be too much like the cover that I just finished. So it is a good suggestion. I just already used it. So I still appreciate it, though. Thank you. Amar's always got some great suggestions, both composition-wise and art tool-wise. So if you guys aren't following him on his YouTube channel, you should definitely check that out. Now, what's funny here is I kind of have to make a decision about whether I really want his abs inked in here, because the way that I drew them on the that color thumbnail, I don't really need the line art for his abs. Those I think really do work in just tone. May have cut a little bit too much off here. Trying to get that stretch. You kind of get that feel of his arm, body raising up like this. But also getting sort of the expansion of his rib cage. And this is where we're getting into that territory of too much detail, possibly. You know what? I'll leave those lines there. Realistically, over on this side is probably where I want to show more of the muscle in his torso. I'm going to wait to draw his hair in for a little bit longer, only because his hair is going to be kind of coming down the upper part of his chest. And I want to make sure I have it. If I need to add any more anatomy to kind of define his pecs, I want to get that in first. To be honest, I think these lines I just put in here, I don't need, and I'm probably just going to end up covering them up. Yeah, let's just get rid of those. I'm going to push his deltoid out a little bit more and let his shoulder muscle, trapezius, come down a little bit more. And we've got his bicep. There we go. They don't need to be rippling, bulging, huge muscles. He's well muscled. You know, he's yoked up, but I don't need to go over the top with it. Let's see here. Oh well, in the chat says, I think the pose is neat, and it's clear it may not be as dynamic, but it's easy to memorize. It suits the character. Shows him, shows more of him, and the background will also add much. I like this choice. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, profiles are nice and easy to read. And I think also the challenge is that, again, I'm trying to capture the feel of a Western. That's part of the reason why there's so much room for his background in this piece. Even though the background is just really just plains, you know, just plains and blue sky. See, I'm already getting into noodle territory with the details. And so from here, it's just a matter of, I have to keep reminding myself as I work to zoom out a little bit and take a look and say, all right, do I need this? Do I need that? Because it is very easy to put a lot of detail in here that I don't need. Now, compositionally, when I draw, well, when I put in color, this whole area between the Lucifer, the profile of Lucifer's face right here, and his hair, this is all going to be black in here. But I don't need to fill it in with black because it's actually probably going to be like dark gray, and I'm going to leave it where you can actually see some of the details of his curls. But if I were to fill it in black, it might just get, I don't want to say muddy, but it's actually cleaner and easier for me to I think, color and add detail if I leave that as an empty space instead of going in there and rendering it. Same here. I'm going to have hair coming down, covering that neck muscle. Try and do it this way. He's got these thick-ass dreadlocks. And it's funny because in a way, the dreadlocks kind of almost imitate the serpent. When I have been drawing Lucifer previously, the same way that I have the serpent wrapped around him. That's kind of how I dealt with the dreadlocks wrapping around his shoulder. We're trying to give them kind of a serpentine look. Owell says also, yeah, it shows more than just a close shot of him. He says, I like this Western vibe. He says, I'm in love with the concept of this comic. Like, damn, it's genius. Well, that, you're just going to inflate my ego then. I mean, I appreciate that, but now my head's going to get big. Genius, I think, might be a bit much, but I greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah. I haven't told this story in a long time, but I used to tell a story on a live stream. The way that I originally came up with the idea for Morningstar, I was in college, and I went down to San Diego Comic-Con with a buddy of mine, and I was waiting for a portfolio review with some comic book samples that I had drawn. And while I was there, I was hanging out with my friend, and I was just sketching, doodling, because, you know, when you're waiting around, it's what artists tend to do. So I'm sketching, I'm drawing these big old cowboys, you know, with shotguns, and I don't know where it came from. But as I'm looking at the sketch, something in me just says, huh. And I put angel wings on one of them. And right there, the idea of doing a story with Lucifer, I didn't have the structure right then and there. But the idea of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western was pretty much the framework of the story, right? It's like the log line. The pitch for the book was born in that moment. And then just over years, I kept working through and reiterating and revising. I mean, even when I was working on this series, I got 4 issues in, and then there were some details in the last half of the series I wasn't happy with. So I went back and redrew. No, I went back and stopped working for a few months just to rewrite the ending of the series. My purpose was that I was happy with the ending, but I don't feel like the characters had earned that ending. The events that they went through to get there, it just didn't feel like they had truly earned that. So I was like, all right, I got to go back and rework this. But yeah, that's how Morningstar came about. Let's see here. Owell says that's true. Black would make it too heavy and too much for the eyes, so to take away that detail and delicate touch. He says, I think you deserve good words for your work and put a ton of effort into your art. It shows. It's a shame you're not more popular. Well, you know what? I feel the same way. Hey, you guys are more than welcome, if not encouraged, to spread the word. If there's anybody that you think is a comic fan or a Western fan or might enjoy it, feel free to share any of the links to the Patreon, the YouTube channel, the comic available on Comixology, all of those. Yeah, definitely. Please help spread the word, because I appreciate that. I appreciate getting the comic out to more people. You know, I do wish that I had a larger audience, but, you know, no one is entitled to an audience just because they create art. And that is one of the hard things, I think, for a lot of people to a lot of creatives to come to grips with, is, you know, we feel like we put all this time and effort into a story, in this thing we create, and then the audience is just magically going to appear. And that is not true. You can make something and it can be quality, and it's still just a matter of, you know, not getting it out to enough people. You know, I don't spend as much time on the marketing as I should. I've mentioned that at some point I'm going to run a Kickstarter for what I call a process edition of Morningstar where I show everything that went into making the comic. So it's not just the pages of the comic itself, but when I finished the first issue, I looked at the stack of thumbnails that I had, my rough sketches, my script, and I realized that I had a graphic novel's worth of material, like over 100 pages worth of material in terms of all of the drawing I did to make 24 pages of comic. And in my mind, I always had an idea of, well, someday I think I would like to share that because the process stuff is what I'm into the most. I like seeing other artists process work. And I thought if I like it, then maybe there would be an audience out there for my process work. So at some point, I am going to put together a Kickstarter campaign. And, you know, hopefully if that funds, then I can just go through the entire series and put together these, you know, 100+ page books that show all of the layouts, the thumbnails, the script. I can go in there and annotate it with all of the notes and things that have changed in the series along the way. And I mean, I mentioned all of this just because, you know, like you said, in terms of having a larger audience and, you know, having more people know about the work, you know, I do believe that Kickstarter is a great way for people who haven't heard of you to discover your work. And I just haven't been participating in that arena. And I should be. So I don't get mad or frustrated about having a larger audience. It's just a matter of doing the work. That's what it all comes down to. And I mean, and that's the thing that's true about making comics in general. In the end, you make the thing, you make it as good as you possibly can, and then you share it with people. But with making comics, all you can do is do the work. And with sharing and promoting it, all you can do is do the work. And, you know, I do believe that if you do that work, it will find an audience. But part of that is just me being here with you guys right now, sharing what I'm doing and just talking about it. But, you know, I'm glad you found me. But yes, please, you are highly encouraged to share this with anybody else that you think would enjoy it. Or somebody who just enjoys, you know, hearing process talk and hear about how things are made. Because I don't think of my channel as a tutorial channel per se, but I feel like showing you both how I'm doing things and how I fix mistakes that I make can hopefully make it easier for you or anyone that's watching that is an aspiring creative. Or just somebody who's a fellow creative who sometimes is just like, I'm banging my head against the wall. And they're like, oh, seeing what somebody else is. I know that helps me as well. Seeing what other people are doing will just make me realize, oh, maybe I'm doing this one particular aspect wrong, or there's a better, more efficient way to do it. All right. Now this is tricky because behind the serpent's tail there, I'm trying to get a sense of fabric wrapping around his leg. I'm trying to also not flatten out the cylinder. The cylinder being the leg itself. So it's a little bit tricky to have curves running along that surface, but not have those curves ruin that cylindrical shape. Trying to get a little bit of that pull there. Fabric coming around from back. And I have drawn Lucifer's boots before, but I feel like I want to go and look at a picture of some cowboy boots while I draw this to try and keep them feeling boot-like, to convert them from just simple cylindrical concepts into actual shoes that feel like shoes. You know, it is funny. All of this time we've been hanging out here talking, the hour has just shot by. We're already, you know, at an hour. Well, we just hit an hour. I'll tell you what, I am going to finish the pants and the boots here, and then we will call it a day. So if anybody watching has any other questions, things that they're thinking about, or want to talk about, you can go ahead and throw those out now, and I'll try to address all of that before we wrap up. I think the first thing I'm going to do here is put a little point partway down the shin. And I'm going to divide his boots here. It's got a little split. I want to say that it's almost like I've got Lucifer's. To a certain degree, it feels like I may have made the resting leg a little too long, but you know, over here it's sort of like that foot. Nah, it's just slid out to the side. Maybe the foot's a little too big. I don't know. It's a little off, but I haven't quite nailed down how and why yet. I'll get it. Let's see here. Oh, well says, I love that you show the way you work. I myself am making comics, and it's interesting to see how other creators learn. Yeah, I'm glad that you're enjoying this. It definitely is something that I'm trying to make the YouTube channel that I would want to watch if I were watching someone else doing it, which is just hearing the hows and whys of, you know, how do they use reference? What are they doing with, you know, with their layouts? What tool, you know, it's not just a matter of what tool you're using, because that's one of those things that, it's not that that question gets old. It's that no matter what tool you use, that's not the determination of whether, you know, a piece is going to come out well or not. You know, there's tons of brilliant artists that aren't digital and are never gonna go digital. I would say a majority probably of existing comic creators, even though more and more people are using digital, you know, the people that have been working in industry for decades, you know, they're old school traditional, and a lot of them are going to stay that way. It's not necessarily, my point is that it's not about the tools, it's about how you use the tools. But there's things that I may do digitally that I learned from watching other people work traditionally. And it's just seeing that, like you said, seeing that day-to-day, seeing that process can open up a lot of doors mentally. So for me, drawing the fabric here, I'm just thinking of them honestly as little tubes that are running around the larger tube that is the cylinder, that is the leg. And for as muscular as I made his arms, because his legs are in jeans, I'm not really drawing them bulging where you can see them, because you don't see muscles through jeans. It wouldn't make sense. They wouldn't feel like jeans if I drew them so you could see his muscles. Now, if he was a superhero and he was wearing something that was a little bit more skin tight, it might make sense for you to be able to see his muscles through there. But in this case, not so much. I'm actually wondering if I should minimize. So I don't want the standing leg to feel too baggy, only because it's so tight on the left-hand side. This is a very interesting little puzzle here. So if you look at his pants, they definitely, his resting leg, the left leg, definitely the pants are tight on there. So it seems a little odd that on the standing leg, they would be so tight. I mean, they would be so loose the way I just drew those baggy wrinkles, those baggy folds in there. Now, it makes sense for it to be baggy around the knees because the knees have to bend, so there's going to be more fabric there. So the question is, how do I make this, these lines I just drew in here? The question then becomes, how do I make these feel tighter? And I think it's just a matter of drawing less of them. So as opposed to what I drew in there before, now it's a matter of trying to make it feel just a little bit like a little bit of a pinch around his legs. So it definitely feels like there's fabric there, and there's material there, and it's loose in some places. But it's not going to feel as baggy. And you want the pants to feel like, you know, both legs are made of the same material. That's the real idea here. And even this, the amount of wrinkles that I put into these, you know, you're not normally going to get this much baggy. Let me put it this way: you would get this much baggy material on modern day jeans, the way that people in the West wear jeans in the 21st century. But for a Western feel, people didn't wear jeans this baggy. And of course, it's a comic. I'm making it up. If I really wanted to have him wearing a 21st century style in a Western, I could do that. I don't think that that would serve the goals of what I'm trying to do in this story. And that's the reason why I'm being, I guess, probably a little bit more conscious of that. Now I'm just scribbling in here. See, this little point in the crotch in terms of how the pants resolve itself. I didn't quite get what I wanted, and then I defaulted. This is something that I'm constantly harping on, which is, you know, not just scribbling something in that's kind of vaguely alluding to something instead of actually drawing whatever the thing is. Like, I feel like that's the a bad habit that I had for many years was I'd draw something, I didn't quite have it figured out, So I would just scribble in something that kind of felt right. And I was like, oh, that'll work. Instead of taking the time to actually figure out, well, which way is this fabric going? Yeah, just scribbling stuff in is a bad habit that I still have to fight. For me at this stage, most of my drawing is really me fighting bad habits. That's most of what it is. Me trying to undo things I've done in the past. I was like, oh, well, this kind of looks cool. Or these marks look right, but they aren't saying anything. You know, cool marks that don't really describe anything are just noise. And I'm really trying to get rid of the noise. You know what? I think what I need to do is just have this come out and then cut this little line off. Now I'm obsessing over small points that I don't think anyone's going to care about. This is the point at which I need to say, all right, let me just simplify this and be done with it. This is where I'm getting into noodling. And I don't want to noodle. There we go. That, I think, will do it. Let's see here. Oh, well, says, sadly, I got to go. Oh, let's see. He mentioned, I love that I mentioned this topic about tools because I often feel like I'm missing out, or that I should do my comics digital, but I really enjoy traditional process. It was nice to hear that. Except I got to go. Tasks are waiting. It was nice to chat a bit. I hope to see you next time. Wish you a good day and night. Thank you. Thank you so much. I wish you a good day or night as well. Appreciate you hanging out. And I think I'm still probably going to work on these boots, but at this point, I've got the pants, I think, pretty well worked out. So yeah, not bad for this session's work. You know, I had the overall structure of Lucifer worked out, but I was able to go in here and basically clothe him, work out the snake. It's not bad for an hour's worth of work. You know, see, that's another thing. It gets really weird. I mean, especially with all the time lapses that we see online, it's real easy to look at artists and see how quickly they do things. And you're just like, is everything drawn lightning fast? I feel like I am the slowest artist on the face of the earth. And I do think that the speed will come, and I think I will get faster. And I've talked in other live streams about things I'm going to start experimenting with in order to speed up. But a lot of my personal work tends to be slow and methodical. It's not that I want to work slowly, but I find that a lot of times when I rush, I may get energy, but then I have to go back and spend a lot of time fixing things. So, all right, y'all. Let's see here. Mark Toons is in the chat. So, what are you drawing? Or what are you drawing with? Oh, I am drawing digitally in Procreate, and I am using the Studio Pen. So, just in here, you know, I just noticed for the first time in a long time, I've been drawing without putting on my little glove to keep me from picking up, making stray marks on the canvas. And, you know, knock on wood, it hasn't been leaving a bunch of stray marks there. So that is a good sign. But yeah, I'm just working on the cover for Volume 2 of the trade for my comic. It's called Morning Star, and it's Lucifer's Fall from Heaven told as a Western. So it's an 8-issue series, and there's links in the description of this video to pick up Volume 1, which has the first 4 issues. And I just recently completed the final issue of the series, so now I'm putting together a cover for the trade edition. So this is my version of Lucifer. He's a black dude, bunch of dreads, and I just thought it was a cool idea to have him with a serpent wrapped around his body while he's getting ready to fire his gun. So let's see here. I think the challenge I have with the boots here is I want to get a sense of the anatomy underneath, but at the same time, you know, the actual boot material isn't really going to show that much anatomy. And I think that's one of the big challenges as a comic book artist is the question of how much real anatomy do you show versus what would really show through in clothing. I mean, the reason why superheroes all wear like the spandex is because it makes figure drawing a lot easier. You know, their costumes being these draped, you know, just being skin tight, and you're really just basically doing figure drawing and then adding a cape to it. That makes things a lot easier than, say, getting really good at drawing clothing, which, you know, you should, but it's hard. I know that I find drawing clothed figures takes more time and more thought than just doing a very simple figure drawing. But also that real clothing, it depends on how it's tailored. It can enhance anatomy, but a lot of times you don't necessarily get the sense of the physique underneath. Like sometimes you'll see somebody in a sweatshirt and they may just look like they're kind of hefty looking. And then you see that either the clothing is really baggy, or they may just be super ripped underneath. So that is a challenge there when drawing clothing. And boots, I think, are one of those where, you know, in reality, you're not really going to see the calf muscle pressing out through the boot. So it's just a challenge of finding that balance of how much detail do I put in there to describe the anatomy, but at the same time not make it look unrealistic. And I'm not a particularly photorealistic artist anyway, but I try not to push the elements to the point where you're just looking at it and you're like, why are they wearing leather and yet you can still see like every ripple of muscle? So it's just a matter of finding that right balance. Okay, so on that note, here's where we are. Still got some work to do on the boots. I will probably get started on the coloring over the course of this week. Who knows? Maybe I might even finish this cover this week. I'm really trying to get back into being a little bit more productive than I've been lately. But I appreciate you guys hanging out. Appreciate you spending time with me. Let's go back here to the old big screen. And again, please, I don't tell people often enough. If you enjoy these videos, please subscribe. If you have friends that enjoy art, enjoy process work, go ahead, please definitely share it. Help spread the word. I appreciate it. It helps me out a ton to spread the word about my work, my comics, my channel. So that's greatly appreciated. If you'd like to get even more videos than you're already getting, then sign up for Patreon. Become a patron. Patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. You get 2 bonus live streams a month, and those bonus live streams are very long. They tend to be 2 to 3 hours long. So you actually, realistically, if you're on the Patreon live streams, there's more live streams than the public live streams I do once a week. So, in terms of the actual hours, it's even more there. We do a thing called Art Book Study Group, where we go through some of the best art books around, and I sit down and just study from them, suck out all the knowledge I can, and we kind of have a chat about what we're learning from these books as we go. I have a Discord channel open so people can actually talk to me, ask questions live while we're doing those. Those are Patreon exclusives. All of that's patreon.com/Jeremy. You can also read my comics in digital format. They're all the issues of Morningstar are posted up there for you guys to read. Definitely check that out. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, the first 3 issues of Morningstar in rough layout form, but with the dialogue on there, so you kind of see, again, some of the process work that I was talking about earlier. You can sign up for my newsletter, newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comics or read digitally on Kindle or Comixology, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. That will forward you to my Amazon author page. My first graphic novel is available there, Eye of the Gods. This book is a self-contained psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. You can pick up Volume 1 of Morningstar, Lucifer's Fall from Heaven, told as a Western. The whole series is 8 issues. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. And the final issue of Morningstar is available on Comixology as well, issue 8. It's available there, and you can purchase physical copies from my main website, jeremy.net. That's GERIMI.net. Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching, for hanging out. I appreciate your time with me. I appreciate your interest in my creative process. Again, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can get notifications every time I go live with a new episode. We do these weekly here every Sunday, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So thank you so much. That's it for now. Go be